Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to be ranking all of the palettes I tried in 2021. I have 45 palettes to share with you guys. So it has taken me a few days to actually sit down and look at all the palettes and rank them. We're gonna go ahead and get started. If you're not yet subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. I upload 3 times a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So definitely subscribe so you don't miss out. And let's just go ahead and jump right in. I do have 45 palettes with me, but I did declutter one palette. I guess I should name it last since I don't have it anymore and it's gone, but I didn't mind it, but I just felt like the shadows was something I already had, and then the colors that I wanted. So it's the Colourpop Dawn Lust for Dust, something like that. Lust for Dusk. I don't know, but that's the last one just because I decluttered. I feel like I like that palette more than these next palettes, but since it's gone, I'm just gonna rank it last. It does have like the gray shades on the bottom right hand side. I thought those were beautiful, but everything else I felt like I have in my collection. The formula was okay, so I figured like I don't really need this palette to just sit and then later on me declutter, so I decided to return it once I thought the formula was all right. So yeah, that is my 45th spot. So I'm not gonna go like the own countdown. Maybe I'll put it up on the screen because I know I'm gonna mess up the countdown. So next palette I have is this one right here. I don't know, I haven't been able, so this is a Artist Couture Supreme Nudes palette. Every time I've used it, I haven't been impressed with the formula. And I've thought of decluttering it, to be honest. And there is palettes in his line that I like the color stories, but I'm like, you have one and you don't really like it. So I don't know. Do you guys like this palette? I remember when it first came out, people were liking it, but I don't really hear people talk about this palette. The mattes are okay. The shimmers I feel like they're like dry and they're okay, but I don't know. I just wasn't impressed with this palette. So this is ranked that low. And then the next one I'm going to rank kind of low. I'm also like really surprised I didn't love it, is this one by Goss. This is the Luxury Eye Palette in Pearl. I picked it up because I really wanted to try out his brand. And again, another palette that I wasn't impressed with the formula. I thought it was going to be better than what it is. It's really light and really like the looks were nice, but they were really, really light looks. And I just wasn't impressed with it. After trying this one, I kind of didn't even want to pick up another palette like to try out his formula. Maybe this one's a dud, I'm not sure. I picked it up because Morgan Turner mentioned how it was a really beautiful like bridal palette, but it's really, really light, so I don't know. I do like this one more than the Supreme Nudes, but they're kind of on par for me. Next up, this might be a little controversial, I don't know, but it's my Michaela palette from Glamlight. I was super excited to get this palette. And again, I haven't used all of the shades, but I've used the two top rows for sure, and then the purples right here. I just am not impressed with the formula. I thought I was going to be more impressed with it. The shimmers are actually really nice, but the mattes are more on the drier side. I heard that this palette's not as good as like the Happy Hour palette, so I was tempted to pick those up during Black Friday. And then I was like, no, you don't really like this palette, so why are you gonna spend money on other palettes? But I heard that those Happy Hour palettes were better than this formula. I have no idea. So this is the only Glamlight palette I do have, and I picked it up because I loved the color story and then I wanted to try out Glamlight, but I just wasn't impressed with neutral shades in here. They look like the same thing on the eyes and I felt like I had to build it up a lot. So again, I just wasn't impressed with this palette, so I'm just ranking it super low. Next up, I like this palette. I like the formula of this brand, but I just, again, it's my least favorite from everything else I did try out. So this is the Dominique Cosmetics Berries and Cream palette, another palette that I thought about decluttering. I have these shades over and over again in my collection. I love like burgundy shades for everyday use. They're just my go-to. I don't know. I just wasn't impressed with this palette. I just feel like I have all these colors. The formula is nice. This one's way nicer than the Michaela Glamlight palette, but I just feel like I have all these shades, so I'm glad I got it on sale. I got it on sale when Sephora had it on sale, but again, they're okay. Okay, I picked up the next 10 palettes from the floor. The next one I have here, these are palettes I'm starting to like from everything else I tried. So this is the BH Cosmetics Lunar Lunar New Year 2021 edit. I was gonna say edition. This one's pretty fun. The color story is fun. The pigment's nice. I really like BH Cosmetic formula. I feel like they're pretty pigmented for how affordable they are. And I really enjoy it. I really like it. And I really like the shadows in here. The formula's great. I haven't really used the glitters, but overall I do like the palette. Next up, I have the Give Me Glow Juicy Olive palette. This one's really nice. I really like the Give Me Glow formula. On my eyes, I'm actually wearing the Give Me Glow The Bad Witch Club. Unfortunately, I never used it in 2021, so that is going to be ranked for 2022, but that's what's on my eyes. I really like the formula. It's really nice. I did rank this a little lower just because I feel like any look I created was the same look with the 6 shades I got. It's really, really nice again, but I just feel like I got the same look with this palette. Next up, I have the Menagerie Cosmetics Killer Purr palette. I'm not a really big fan of the packaging on this. Anyone else? Just me? This one, I ranked it lower. I really like the formula on it, but the color story's kind of blah, and it's okay. I really, again, like the formula. I just feel like I have everything, all these colors and other palettes that I like more, so ranking next. Next up, this one I do like, but again, they're just gotta be ranked somewhere, and I like other palettes more. But this is the Violet Voss All of You Forever. This one has really good pigmentation. I actually really like the Violet Voss formula. These are like my go-to shades for everyday use. I love using all these colors, but then like these 3 shades here, oh, this one's nice too, but like the darker greens, they're okay. The formula is really nice. I think this is a BoxyCharm palette that people got, because I don't have BoxyCharm, but I follow the Facebook group and that's where I got mine. I like the pigmentation on this. It's really nice. So starting to like the palettes now, huh? That I'm ranking. Next up, I have the Colourpop Ornate palette. This is, again, my kind of color story. I think the pigment's nice on this. I, again, really enjoy burgundy shades, and it's just a really good pigmented standard Colourpop pigmentation palette. I really like it again, and these two are kind of similar, but overall I think it's a really pretty color story. Like the shimmers are a little different because they have like an orangey copper color, and then this one's like a pale gold orange flip to it. I think it's nice, so I like that one. Next up, I'm ranking my Sigma Untamed palette next. This one, I really enjoyed the pigmentation on it. I just feel like a lot of the shades that I'm ranking are kind of the same color stories. I do really like the formula on this, so that's why I bought another palette from Sigma from them. I think it's really pretty, and Sigma has been stepping up their formula game because I don't remember it being this good. So they're definitely doing something really good with their formula. Next up, I have the Tim Burton The Nightmare Before Christmas palette. I think this is a really good palette for Colourpop, like pigmentation wise, like it's their formula. I do wish it had like a bright green for the Boogeyman. Like I feel like it needed that. Overall, like these, I see these colors being put in here because of Sally's dress, and I really like that they put these like dark colors, grays, muted colors, because that's how the movie is like throughout the whole movie. But I do feel like it needed like a dark green. Maybe if they removed this one and put a bright green in there. Overall, I really like this palette, but it's not like my favorite one I have from Colourpop. Next up, I have the Too Faced Pumpkin Spice palette. This one came out in the holidays last year, and I tried it in the beginning of the year. I really love this color story, and actually I need to be pulling this out soon because I need to play with it more. I remember loving all of the mattes in here and the shimmers. It's been a while since I've used this palette, and I just think it's really pretty. It's definitely wearable for me, and I need to pull this out again because I actually really enjoyed it. Next up, I have one of the Temptalia palettes. This is the Quintessence. This is a light version. I actually really like the formula on Sydney Grace. I just feel like this is not a very wearable color story for me, and like for work, because I wear makeup every single day, and I just feel like it's too much for work. Like I can wear whatever I want, but I just feel like it's too much. Like honestly, I wouldn't really be wearing like these shades or that one to work. Again, I do really like the color story, but I just don't reach for it as much because I feel like half of the shades in here I won't use. I kind of wish I would have gotten, is it On the Horizon? That one's a little more wearable than this one. And I've, again, debated on decluttering this one just because it's not as wearable for me. Like, you know, for work appropriate. So next up, I have the Alien Cosmetics Not Normal palette. This one's really nice. This is my first ever Alien Cosmetics palette. I really like the pigmentation. The formula is really nice. I feel like it's a middle ground for me. It's like really good palette, you know? Like I would try more from Alien Cosmetics, and I really like the color story. The packaging's kind of for me, like, but the color story is beautiful. I got it because it reminded me of like Beetlejuice. I kind of regret not picking up the Beetlejuice collab with Melt Cosmetics. I was really hoping they'd bring it back this year, but they didn't. But I, again, do like the formula on this, and I would pick up another palette from there. We're on the top, is it 30 palettes? This is the BH Cosmetics Naughty palette. This is another palette that came out the end of last year. It was their holiday palette. This is actually really good. I really liked it. The only reason why I ranked it like middle-ish ground is because it's kind of big. I wouldn't travel with this. Sometimes when I have too many options, I kind of get like overwhelmed because I have too many options. And again, I wouldn't travel with this. It's just a really big palette. It's as big as my head. I have a big head, but I like it. The pigment's super good. Like, again, I'm telling you guys, BH Cosmetics has been stepping it up, and they're really affordable. I need to play with this again because I remember really liking this. Next up, I was actually surprised with this palette here. This is my first ever palette from NARS. This is the Cool Crush eyeshadow palette. I got this from Marshall's for like $20. I really love the color story, and I was actually really impressed with the pigmentation. All I needed in this palette is like a dark brown or a dark purple, and I think this, it would have been ranked up higher. I really was impressed with the formula. The pigment's really nice. Again, I was really impressed. I would definitely be consider buying more from NARS. I was surprised on how good the pigmentation is on these. So ranked next up, I have the Candy Skies by Laura Lee in collab with her niece Erin. I think this is really pretty. Again, this is also missing some deep shades for me, but this is really a great palette for like springtime. It's really nice in summer as well. It's just more on basic looks, I feel, because it doesn't really have deep colors to deepen an eye look. But overall, I think the pigment's super nice. This is my first ever Laura Lee palette. I got this for my birthday. My friend gave it to me for my birthday, so I got it mid 2021, and I did enjoy it. Again, the formula is really nice. And I was actually surprised on how good the pigmentation was on that. Next up, I'm ranking my Sigma Magnifique palette in this box. I don't know what number I'm on. I'm actually really surprised. I wore this a few times, and I went on an overnight trip, and this is what I took with me. I love how compact it is. The pigmentation is really good. Again, I really like the Sigma formula. They've been stepping it up, and I feel like this is my kind of everyday color story. Again, I have like shades for my crease. These two, I got a dark shade for the outer corner, and then I have 3 options for shimmers on the lids. I think this is a really good travel palette for me, so I really enjoyed that. Next up, I have the Odin's Eye in collab with Annette, the Giant Wolves palette. I picked up this one and the one with, I don't remember her name, the dragon one. And I don't know, like, I like it, but I was expecting more for some reason. I really like the shimmers. The mattes were okay. They're not bad, but I don't know. Like, I was just expecting more from Odin's Eye because everybody raves about them. But this is what the color story looks like in here. I'm actually really happy I have this in my collection. This color down here is so beautiful. It's like a pink, blue, aqua shift to it. I actually really loved the shades I used and the looks I created with this palette. I was expecting a little bit more with how much people were raving about the brand, but I've only tried this palette out. I do need to still try the dragon one I have, and I kind of regret not just getting the whole bundle because now I'm kind of eyeing the colorful one as well. So I don't know. Again, I like it, but I was like expecting more from Odin's Eye. Next up, I have a Mcgrath palette. This one is the Mothership 8 Divine Rose 2. I was able to snag up through Poshmark the limited edition packaging. This one is definitely my least favorite. I do have, what, 3 more Mcgrath palettes. This is my least favorite from the other ones that I am going to be ranking. I don't know, I just feel like the shades are more on the darker side. I just don't, I don't know, the color story is nice, but I just, even though I do reach for like these kinds of shades for every day, like I don't really reach for like this kind of pink, a golds. I don't know. I just wasn't like pulled in. I have other Mcgrath palettes I like more than this one, so I didn't want to put it all the way on the bottom, but not all the way on the top either. It's just like, I think this is my least favorite from the big palettes that I do have. Next up, I have the LA Girl Main Stage Desert Dream eyeshadow palette. This is really good for being drugstore as well. I really mostly love like the top shades. The mattes are more on the drier side. You have to go a lot of times back and forth to pack it onto the lids. I want to pick up another color story that I feel like I would really enjoy because I really like the pigmentation on that. Next up, I have Beauty Bae palette. This is the Wilderness palette. I do have the other one, the Age of Opulence. I like the color story. I feel like it's a little more wearable kind of than the Age of Opulence, but I don't know. I feel like I like the other one better, just like the color story. This one has a little bit of mixes of greens and oranges and reds and blues. I really like both, but I was like, which one do I like more? Like if I had to declutter one, which one would I keep? So that's how I kind of ranked it. So I have Wilderness, and then I also am then ranking the Age of Opulence by Beauty Bae. I really like the jewel tone shades in here. I think it's just a beautiful palette. Like I think both of them are on par, to be honest, but I kind of think that I like this one a little bit more just because of how pretty and jewel toned this palette is. I do find that the shimmers in this one, they did kind of crease on my lids, but nothing too crazy. That is why I kind of ranked it in the middle, because I do like them. I don't hate them, or like I do like them a lot. Again, I just love the jewel tones in here, so I just ranked this one up a little higher. Next up, I have the Melt Cosmetics Millennial Pinks palette. I really like this. Yeah, the shimmers in here aren't as pigmented as the other shimmers they may have, but I really love the color story, the pinks and the blue-gray colors in here. I think it's such a beautiful color story, and the mattes have been on par with their formula. I feel like the shimmers have definitely not been on par with the more creamier shimmers that I do have in other palettes, but overall I actually really like the color story, and the pigment's fine for me, so I don't need too much like glitteriness every single day. So I actually really enjoy this palette. Okay, I'm on top 20. 20th spot's gonna go to my Sigma Cinderella palette. This is a color story, again, another jewel tone palette. I think it's super pretty. The pigment's nice. I did have issues with the purples in here, the matte ones, but overall everything else has been pigmented and very nice to use. I really love that they collabed with Cinderella and did like a Disney themed palette. I really hope they come out with like an Ariel palette. And I also really like Belle, so hopefully they do collabs with them too. Next up, I have the Natasha Denona Trio Chrome palette. I picked this up because I thought it was pretty. I got this from Poshmark, so I didn't pay full price for it. I think they were selling it for like half the cost. So I think this is really nice. I actually really enjoy all of the shades in here. The trio chromes aren't that trio chromey, but overall I think it's a really great palette. I like the mattes. I like those three shimmers in here. Overall, like, I really enjoy this palette, so I ranked it up a little higher. Next up, I really like this palette a lot. This is the Colourpop Lush Life palette. How fun was this palette? I remember when I saw it launch, I was like, I need this palette. Like, it's such a fun, out of the box kind of color story for Colourpop, and I love that they incorporated shades from the packaging in here as well. I think this is a really nice Colourpop palette. It's something super different. They always come out with like neutral shades, different placements, but it's pretty much the same freaking palette in any other Colourpop one. But overall, again, I really enjoyed that one. Next up, I was actually surprised how much I like this one. This is the KK Beauty Camo palette, I believe. Yeah, Camo palette. I was actually impressed on how much I liked this as well. This one, I really enjoyed the greens and the mustardy shades in here. The pigment's actually really nice. I really enjoyed this like greeny yellow shimmer right there. This one's, again, I was really surprised because I had the classical palette from KKW and I actually declared that, but this one, like, I really enjoy. I just really like the army kind of color shades in here. Next up, I'm ranking my Huda Beauty Naughty Nude palette. This was a palette I actually got for Christmas last year, and it's a really great color story. The pigment's super nice. Again, these are my kinds of everyday kind of shades, and again, the pigmentation is really, really good. I definitely enjoy all the shimmers and mattes in here. The formula on these are really good compared to the smaller ones. Again, overall, I really like this palette as well. Next up, I have another Colourpop palette. This is the High Tide palette. I kind of debated which one to put up higher, but I feel like I've used this one a little bit more than the Lush palette. Just like a monochromatic teal palette. I really love the shades in here. The looks I've created are super beautiful. And I just ranked this up a little higher than the Lush palette, but overall I like both of them a lot. Next up is this Made by Mitchell palette. This is a Feet on the Ground palette. Such a beautiful color story as well. I really love all the, again, army shades, mustardy shades. It's like a really like grungy kind of palette, but with a few pops of colors in here. The formula is really nice. I actually kind of wanted to get the, is it Milk palette Made by Mitchell? But I was just like, no, like, honestly, I was gravitated towards the shades that are similar to here on that palette. So I haven't heard great things about the palette, and I haven't really seen anybody rave about the palette. So I figured maybe you just don't need it. Just go ahead and pass on it. But this one's actually really great. Has really great pigmentation. Next up from ranking is my Blend Bunny Cosmetics Surge palette. I really love the color story in here. I love that they did like pastels, darker shades, deeper shades, shimmers, and like neons. Honestly, I haven't used all of the shades in here, but I knew just trying what I have tried in this palette, I wanted to rank it up a little higher. I just feel like it's a really great color story, and I just love all the different shades and tones from the color stories. I just think it's a really nice laid out palette. The pigment's really nice. They did come out with, what was it called? Dollhouse palette. I was kind of eyeing it and not. I feel like a lot of the deep shades in that palette are pretty similar, but this one right here is really, really good. Next up, I have the Kaleidos Club Nebula palette in collab with Angelica. I'm super happy I got this in my collection and I was able to snag it up. This is really good. I love the dark mattes in here. The shimmers are super pretty as well. This is another palette I feel like I need to reach for lately. I've been buying a lot of palettes, so I need to relax on the purchasing and enjoy what I have in my collection. I just really love the Kaleidos formula. It's really, really good. And the color story on this is really, really unique to my collection. I really enjoyed this palette, but I have seen a few people rank this as their #1 palette. Next up, I have my next Pat McGrath palette. This is the Mothership 6 Midnight Sun palette. I actually really love all of the shades in here, and the pigment on this is actually really, really nice as well. This is what the color story is. This is definitely another me palette. I would use every single shade in here. This is a gold, but it's not as like yellow gold like the other Mcgrath palette is. This, I used every single shade when I pulled it in my Shop My Stash. I love this palette. The pigment's super nice. The shimmers were super nice as well. I just really enjoyed this palette. This is my 11th spot palette, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And it would have ranked up a little higher, but again, the next palettes I'm gonna be sharing with you guys are like my top ones that I used. So top 11 is definitely not bad. Okay, you guys, I'm on my top 10 palettes. Okay, so on my number 10th spot is my Melt Cosmetics Amor y Mariposas palette. This is like a, I believe it's like a shadow / pigment palette. I think the last 2 rows are pigments. I really love the color story. Again, these are like my shades. I love the greens in here. Like I would use every single shade in here to work. I just think it's really nice. I do wish it had like a champagne kind of color. Like these two are kind of similar, but overall I think it's a beautiful palette. I love the packaging. I love the color story. I love the meaning behind the palette. I think it's really, really nice. So this is my number 10th spot. Next up, I have the Colourpop Limoncello palette. This was a really good palette from last year. I was actually really impressed with every single shade in here. Again, another palette that I used every single shade. Really loved how pigmented and buttery the shimmer shades were, even the mattes as well. I really enjoyed this palette. This one definitely had to be ranked up higher than the other Colourpop palettes I ranked, just because I love the outer packaging. I love the color story in here. I was actually very impressed with the formula. Next up, my number 8 spot is going to my Beauty Bean x Shroud Cosmetics It's Freaking Bats palette. This one definitely had to be ranked in the 10th spot. I waited like 6 months to try this palette out as well, and actually was very impressed with the formula and pigment, and color story is beautiful. I feel like I waited forever for the Glamlight Michaela palette, and I didn't get the wow factor like I did with this palette here. I love the color story. It's super unique, and I really love the pigmentation as well. I definitely want to try out more from Shroud Cosmetics. I don't know if they changed their name. Maybe they didn't. I'm not sure. There's a lot of indie brands that have changed their name recently. Next up, I have the Natasha Denona Bronze Palette. This is a me palette again. I am ranking this on my top 10, but I did find that a lot of the looks that I created were pretty similar. That's the only thing downside of this palette. I feel like a lot of the shades are pretty similar, like these two, like these are kind of similar as well. Like I feel like there should have been a little more variation, but this definitely very bronzy eye looks. Overall, the pigment, the shimmers are really, really nice, and that is why they are ranking in my top 10. So in my number 6 spot, I'm putting my Huda Beauty Rose Quartz palette. This shimmer formula is super nice, and the mattes are really nice. Again, I just was really impressed. Like even the first look I ever created using this palette, I was like, wow, the shimmers in here are very buttery and very like glittery and reflective and beautiful. I really enjoyed this palette here. So this is my number 6 spot. My number 5 is going to my BH Cosmetics Blueberry palette. This is a cool toned blue purple awesome palette. I don't know what to say. This formula is actually kind of reminding me of this palette here, to be honest. I just really like the color story in here. It's more unique to my collection, I feel, or unique to all the color stories that I usually tend to pick up. Every time I've used this palette and created looks, I've loved every look I've created with this. I do wish it had like a dark blue, because I always deepen up my looks with this one. It looks like a brown, but I feel like on the eyes it pulls kind of purple. So I wish it had like a really, really dark blue, but overall, oh my god, I love this palette. Next up is going to go to my Adept Cosmetics Plain Jane palette. I was kind of wondering where to put this, but oh my gosh, definitely top 5. This is an all shimmer palette, and it's actually a pretty pricey palette as well, but I just feel like this palette's super nice and reflective. I definitely need another palette to pair with this because again, it's just an all shimmer palette. I would pick up more from Adept. I really like it. I just feel like some of the color stories are kind of like way out there, and I don't like that you have to wait weeks before they even ship it out. But it's actually kind of worth it, I feel, because the pigment on these are super nice, and they're like multi-chrome. Some of these are multi-chromes. They're really reflective and beautiful. I'm like super happy I have this in my collection. So my number 3 spot's gonna go to my Pat McGrath Utopian Dream palette. I love the shades that are in here. The purples in here are beautiful, like these shades. I like all the mattes. I like all of the shades. This gold, it's okay, but overall, I think it's such a fun color story. The shimmers are super reflective and really beautiful. Like this is like pinky gold. This is like blue purple. Like it's so pretty. It's such a beautiful palette. I love the packaging on this. I save the packagings because I just feel like it's like so pretty. Like how can I throw that away when I see people just have like palettes like this in their collection? I'm like, where's the packaging? Like I feel like that's what like kind of makes the palette as well, because of the packaging. I feel like it's so pretty like to throw away. These palettes are really expensive, but I feel like if you find a color story that you're going to use like every single shade, or if you might not use one shade, I would still suggest picking up a palette that's more closest to your liking. Look how pretty these are. I'm just like, they're just beautiful. Like I feel like I have like light shades for the crease, and then something brighter, a deep shade. I have the shimmers that I would use, and I have these pretty beautiful glitter shimmers down here. It's like a beautiful palette. So next up, my number 2 spot is gonna go to my ABH Primrose palette. Oh my god, this is another Mariella palette, like me in a palette for sure. The shimmers in this palette is very, like, I'm barely touching it. Look how much pigment I have on my finger. It's very metallic-y, very beautiful, very reflective, very pigmented. I was actually super impressed when I got this. I'm not a big fan of the ABH formula, even though I have a ton of her palettes, but this one's different. I feel like this one is different, and the shimmers are, I think they're a little more sparklier than the Sultry palette. The pigment on the mattes are really nice as well. I was very impressed with this one for sure, and I would definitely not declutter it. And then last one, you guys. So my number 1 palette is gonna go to a Pat McGrath palette, and that's the Mothership Mega Celestial Odyssey palette. I wasn't going to pick this up, and I just kept hearing great things about it. I honestly didn't want to pick it up because I felt like it was kind of plain everyday kind of colors, which is fine because that is what I want, like to be able to wear these shades to work and get my money's worth out of it since it's kind of pricey. I find myself loving, again, every look I create using this palette. The shimmers are super nice, the mattes are super nice. I feel like I have another palette, I think it's Bronze Seduction, the big palettes, and I feel like that formula is different from this one and the other palettes I've talked about in this video. I just feel like these ones are more buttery and pigmented and creamier. Like the Bronze Seduction, I don't feel like is as creamy as this one is. And I kind of thought, because Bronze Seduction I believe was the first ever Pat McGrath I bought, and I was kind of feeling like I think people are hyping it up more than it is, but I'm glad I still kept buying from Pat McGrath and like trying out the formula, because I feel like the Bronze Seduction is kind of different formula than this. I need to pull it out. I'll probably need to just pull it out and see, because I fell in love with the mattes and the shimmers in here. Very pigmented and buttery. So that is my palette ranking. Let me know what your top 5 were. I would love to know. This was a very long video. I hope you guys stayed till the end to find out what my #1 spot was, or my top 10 were. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please also subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!